we hear item number 4.
Thank you very much. Good to be here and good to see you all. Been a long time. I miss you all, and I miss in person also, as well as Greek recipes of cookies made by Cliff. It's phenomenal. So I miss you all. Long story short. So thank you. Really quick on this particular project. So I had initial neighborhood meeting about this project, and there was many concerns about design, also about traffic, also about how urban design can really integrate with First Street and with East Washington. So developer did a really good job engaging neighborhood. Then they came to Urban Design Commission. You guys provided initial feedback for the design improvement, and I've seen substantial amount of improvement in the design, and I'm happy to see the developer accommodate a lot of feedback given by the constituent and community. With those feedback given by you and the design he changed, we conduct another neighborhood meeting where we collect really positive feedback. There was concerns regarding parking spots underground, and the developer came across a ride sharing program. Also, that project is right on a future BRT route, right on East Washington. So it's always good to have that connectivity. So also regarding sustainability as well as building design, there were some promises made and there are some progress I can see, especially with initially it was proposed as a 7-story, then it decreased to 6 stories, 310 units from 350. Residents still have concerns about the density of the project. However, as an alder of the district, I understand that, especially in East Washington, where we have a great connectivity. And also I talked to the developer personally about it. With the construction cost, it's very hard for them to decrease the project to 4 stories. It will literally kill the project. And I will let them speak more about the project itself. Several other Amherst and East Neighbor Association, they also created a subcommittee. That subcommittee did a really good job engaging with the developer as well as expressing their concerns. Some of the things I also want to mention is beyond this project. As an example, right now, many orders, including me and other orders who are in the downtown area as well as on East Washington, we are battling right now on the design of East Washington itself. So regardless this project move forward or not move forward, the East Washington First Street is the city have to think about how we can redesign in a way which create more safety and also create more welcoming vibe to the city rather than a highway. So East Washington is a hot topic, and city and traffic engineering really need to work on this. And me and other alders are fully committed. We just had a meeting today as well. So that's something definitely want to mention with this particular project. I think so. There's a bigger picture is the city role as a whole on East Washington. Also, I will appreciate the developer looking into the design aspect. And also the latest after your input, he made some substantial amount of changes, which I appreciate as well as neighbors. However, there are some concerns from some neighbors, and I will let on experts to decide and review, as you guys are all have a better knowledge than me on urban design. And I appreciate all of your time as well. And I just want to say that I appreciate the residents as well as the developers to accommodate a lot of concerns and doing a good job engaging the residents as well. So thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, then moving on to disclosures and recusals.
I have 2 for items 3 and 4.
Okay, Kevin, if you would note, Rafiq will be recusing himself on those 2. Great. And while you're up, Kevin, how about an agenda overview?
Sure, thank you, Chair. I would happy to give an overview at this point of tonight's agenda. On the agenda, we have 2 public hearing items. That's items 3 and 4. The first is 222 and 232 East Olin Avenue. It's a new development in Urban Design District 1. There is a staff report and there are public comments that are available through Legistar and previously provided via the links that Julie Cleveland had sent. Second public hearing is 1858 through 1890 East Washington Avenue, and this is new development in Urban Design District 8. 6-story building. This one is there's also a staff report and comments as previously provided. Again, these are public hearings, and the commission is an approving body on both of these items. Then the other 3 items are signage related. Item number 5 is 7213 Mineral Point Road. This is a signage exception. Item number 6 is 301 Wisconsin Avenue. This is a signage variance. And item 7, 9510 Watts Road. This is a signage exception. The UDC is an approving body on all of these signage items. There are staff reports that have been provided to outline these issues. Staff does recommend the signage items 5, 6, and 7, all for approval on the consent agenda. And staff also notes item 2 is on for referral. This is a report of the facade grant team, and there's a referral note on the agenda. That's my quick overview of the agenda. Happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you. First, if I could get a motion to refer item number 2 to a future meeting. Lois, seconded by Tom. Okay, thank you. And then seeing if there would be a nomination to include 5, 6, and 7 as approved through the consent agenda. Shane, that's for all 3. Okay, is there a second, Lois? Okay, any discussion on the motion? Tom?
Just no discussion, and I agree with the motion. Just wanted to make a comment though on item 7, the Edison. I just found it like one of the things we look for is signage that is sort of consistent with the design of the building. And I did not find that sign. I find the sign sort of rustic and antiquated, and the building very, very contemporary. So it's an observation, just a point of information. I would just wonder why they, made it so distinctly different from the design of the building. But I will go with the referral, with the consent.
Okay, thank you. All right, seeing no other hands raised, then items number 5, 6, and 7 are approved. If you're here for items number 5, 6, or 7, you are certainly welcome to join us for the rest of our agenda. Otherwise, you are approved, and we look forward to seeing you on maybe a future project. Okay. So we got through disclosures, we got through the agenda overview, we took care of items 2, 5, 6, and 7. That brings us to item number 3, 222 through 232 Olin Avenue. And I'd just like to remind the public and the presenters that we do have a strict 3-minute limit to each presentation. Thank you.
Hello.
As far as an overview, we have, I believe, 2 presenters from the development team, and that is Jolie and the applicant. I'm sorry, Julie. My list is
Lance McGrath.
Lance. Thank you, Lance. Sorry. And Lance McGrath are our 2 speakers, and we also have other speakers that are registered, and we will call those later in the public hearing.
Lance, did you want?
Yeah, I'll get started, Joe. If you can pull up the PowerPoint, that'd be great.
Just one second.
Kevin, when we get into the PowerPoint, we'll probably fly through some of those in the interest of time.
Okay. I will advance those. Oh, Stefan, if you could allow me to share my screen.
There we go. Should be set.
Yeah, Joe, I think it was recent enough. We recall a lot of the building elements. I think just what has changed and just kind of updating us.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll keep mine really brief then. So I'm going to start. This is Lance McGrath. Spencer Christensen from Veerbecker is also available if we've got any questions regarding the landscape and civil design. But as you mentioned, Cliff, we had a pretty detailed informational meeting back in April. Got some really good feedback. I think in general, there haven't been any dramatic changes to the overall design, but I do believe that we've addressed most of the comments that we did receive. Predominantly the entry feature has been tweaked to make it feel a little less commercial and more pedestrian friendly. The rooftop screening feature on the mechanical penthouse, which attracted a lot of attention and discussion, has been redesigned to make it more of what I'd call an architectural feature. It has recessed in vertical fins. We are still proposing that is lit, but it is going to be, the light fixtures are basically just soft washing inside frame of that recess and the fins, as opposed to casting light outward. And then the landscape design has also advanced significantly since we last met. The site itself is pretty challenging, pretty poor soils, high groundwater, lots of public utilities that need to be rerouted, but it's really a special site. In my mind, one of the very few in the city that can handle a project of this scale, at least this close to downtown. Great location with proximity to downtown, surrounded by parks, just a great spot for what we're trying to do here. The rest of it, I think we've probably touched base on, but the size of the site and the scale of the project really allows us to incorporate a lot of desirable amenities inside the building, really outside, the urban design purview, but things that are really going to enhance the living experience within the building. Some of these are exterior features, but we have this large residential lobby, a covered drop-off delivery area where all the Uber rides and Amazon deliveries and food deliveries and pickups all can happen under cover. And in that same area, there's direct access to the mail and parcel room for the delivery drivers, so they're not hauling dollies through the lobby. We also have 2 off-street loading zones with a separate move-in entrance, which is a nice feature. There's an outside dog run. There's a dog wash station in the building. Got a couple bike maintenance stations. A garbage and recycling chute on every floor. Pretty good size entertainment suite on the first floor. 2 community rooms, one on the 5th floor, one on the 14th floor. And then we also have a fitness center on the 5th floor that also has some exterior exercise area. And then our large 5th floor community terrace has multiple soft seating zones. There's an outdoor kitchen, some grilling stations, a fire pit. Really hard for us to accomplish these in our typical infill project. But my last comment, I think, is, this is, in my opinion, I think this is a really thoughtfully designed project. And we're really eager to get started with it. If everything comes together as planned, we should be starting mid to late fall, maybe even as early as mid-September. And I'll turn it over to Joe and fly through the rest of it.
Thanks, Lance.
Thank you.
Kevin, are you controlling it? Yeah. So you can fly through all these plans. Maybe stop at the site. Keep going. Keep going. We provided, stop here, please. We provided the other plans, and we'll fly through some more plans just as a reference if there's any questions. But like Lance said, from our pretty in-depth presentation in late April, program hasn't changed, the design hasn't changed in any significant manner. We have just refined and progressed the design and refined it based on the Urban Design Commission's comments and other criteria. So I will not go into any detail on this other than what's kind of changed and new. So happy to answer questions, but we'll just skip through here and maybe go right, Kevin, to the first perspective image, if you don't mind. Yeah. So what's different here, and it's very subtle but very impactful, I think. On this elevation, there was a comment from this commission in April that the entry at the pedestrian level needed a little bit of refinement, and we agreed. So what we've done since the last go round is we've really scaled down that secondary entry canopy there. Not the big overhang one, but the other one, we've scaled that back, scaled that down a little bit. We still think, we did a bunch of studies, and we still think it's nice, and it really needed to kind of break that scale down. But it didn't need to be so overpowering and didn't have to stick out so big, and we could reduce the profile of it. So we believe that those enhancements really helped. We've also refined and enhanced that whole entry area, both the vehicular area and the pedestrian area, where we brought the pedestrian entry out a little bit closer to the road, the sidewalk. You can see we've enhanced the landscaping in that area as well. And another thing is, you can see on that larger canopy that goes the entire horizontal length of the building, we're going to incorporate some green roof elements, as was suggested. We've added some glazing on the corners at those areas as well. And even though those are small adjustments, they really, we think, make really great impact to enhance that. You'll also see in the documents that we enhanced the landscaping in the commercial plaza area. That's on the right inside of this image. So we feel, we've just had the time to enhance and refine that, and that's been a positive enhancement. And so maybe we go to the next slide, and I can talk a little bit more about this mechanical penthouse element that we have. So this building, a building of this scale and size, as we discussed before, requires a rooftop mechanical penthouse. And as we know, those things are unsightly and need to be screened. And so what we want to do is to incorporate that into the design of the project from the street all the way up to the sky. We wanted this to be a cohesive design. So we've created that penthouse element, which, if you remember before, got a little bit of pushback on what we were proposing in concept there, that it was maybe too over the top, too in our face, as far as how much that was illuminated. And as we started to explore and refine it a little bit more and looked at different options of what we could do, we agreed, and we actually liked this better. And so what this is at that penthouse level, we have a curtain wall system that has vertical fins that extend out anywhere from 15 to 18 inches. So you can kind of see the verticality in that area, in that box. That's recessed, and I wish I could point, because I'm hoping you know what I'm talking about, but all that is recessed a little bit. And we have a series of lights that line the bottom horizontal frame, for lack of a better term, of that rectangular area. And they're specialty lights that flood the back side of that finned area, which is clad with metal panel, and the frame area. So really, it's focusing the light on the frame. And we've done some extensive research and talking with a specialty lighting designer and consultant on just this. And what we're showing here is a realistic indication of intensity of the illumination of that element. So we think it's really downplayed. It's really just washing frame of that element, and allows it to be part of the composition of the design without being in your face or without being too overpowering. So we're really happy with the way it turned out at the end here. So next one, Kevin. Another comment from last time, again, you see this commercial area with plaza was enhancing that, the design of that hardscaped area and how it integrated with the landscape. So we've done that, and you can see more detail in the landscape. But also on the right there, along the ground floor, there was some discussion about how we can enhance the landscaping there to work with the rhythm of the openings and the architecture along that. What behind it is the 4-story parking deck. So we've incorporated some columnar vegetation and varied it to work with the rhythm of those openings and the pattern of the fenestration. We think that's very successful as well. So you can see that here in this illustration. Go on to the next one, Kevin. Just a nighttime view. You know, all of the materials, everything else is all the same as last time. So that's why I'm not really going into it. So next one, Kevin. Again, here's another from a little bit higher up, but you can see both that landscaping along the eastern ground plane of the building. And again, you can see some indication of how we've enhanced that plaza landscaping, hardscape area and landscape area, as well as the green roof element above the commercial space. So those are all enhancements based on discussions we had. Next one, Kevin. Just a nighttime rendering. Next one, Kevin. This is just a close-up view of what I talked about before, and you can see how this pedestrian realm has really been enhanced. Next one, Kevin. This is a view. This is a new view. I don't think you had last time, but it's John Nolan Drive going the other way. Building and the amount of glass, which is going to be spectacular for views in these units and in the common amenities. Next one, please, Kevin. Again, the materials have not changed, so I haven't gone into it, but high quality materials, metal panel system, brick, and a large amount. Fantastic. I believe that might be it, but can you? Oh, I'm sorry. Here's a. These are the lights. You can see this is an example of what that penthouse element. You can see these are the lights that are going to be used up there. An example of that. So in those arched openings, you can see that the perimeter of those arched openings are really washed with some light to eliminate that, but it's not omitting any light outward. And so that's just an example of the actual light fixtures we're going to be using for that penthouse element. I would give you a live example of that. So there's not an intense light source. Next one. And I think that's it. The rest are just kind of for reference. If there's any questions, we can answer or address. There's elevations and landscape.
I'm sure there will be a lot of interesting comments and questions. But before we open it up to the commission, there are some members of the public who would like to speak on this. So Julie, if you could announce the first person.
First person is Andy Meessmann speaking in support, followed by Helen Kitchell speaking in.
Okay, Andy.
Hello, can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can.
Excellent, thank you guys. I prepared a slide here. I'll probably skip through these pretty quickly here, but my name's Andy Meessmann. I'm a resident in the Bay Creek neighborhood. I live about a half mile from this development site. I'm mostly in support of this development. I think it's a logical location for this density. It's great infill potential. It's still close to downtown and many amenities. It's nice to see the updates provided by the design team here for landscape revisions along the ground floor that work with the architecture of the parking deck. I am still concerned about the light pollution emitted from the building, the proposed beacon top of the building, and the overall impacts this will have on the nearby parks. Light pollution means any unnecessary light, which I would deem this beacon at the top as unnecessary. Architectural element is not a necessary component of site lighting. And the example provided just previously for the lights that would be used, that was on it looked like be about a 30-foot tall historic structure. This is going to be 180 feet plus in the air. So, and also light is always emitted outward. It's always going to be seen. And I can go through in a little bit more detail of what this might look like. If you guys want to move on to the next slide really quick. Just to give a quick background of what light pollution looks like. The image on the left is a typical scene. Image on the right is during a blackout in 2003 that affected 55 million people. So this is typically what you'd see in the dark sky. Go on the next slide. Just example of light pollution here in Madison. I took a couple photos a few years ago, 22 miles west of Madison. You go to the next slide. Photo 1, looking at the halo that's created from the city. You can see the lack of stars in the horizon there. Move to the next slide. What it looks like, same location, looking to the northwest. You can see the clear difference there. You can go to the next slide. This is important because there's 2 large regional parks within the proximity of this project site, Olin Park to the east and University of Wisconsin Arboretum to the west, which are large habitats for wildlife and residents that usually go to these places because of the setting. Go to the next slide. It's important because 90% of the birds that migrate at night. The Mississippi flyway accounts for about 325 different bird species that pass over Madison that are directly affected by light, and that large beacon on the top will limit their ability to guide safely through this area. You can go to the next slide. And this is really the key point here is that in 2010, since 2010, there's been significant efforts by Foot, the Friends of Olin Turville, with the Bay Creek Neighborhood Association, South Madison Police District to restore the natural landscape in Olin Park. And light pollution, the trespass will definitely impact the ecosystem here, as well as the Arboretum 1 mile to the west. You can go to the next slide. This is important because annually about 1 billion birds die in North America from fatal flight impacts at night and day. This is just an exhibit at Ottawa's City Hall. They collected 2,100 different birds in 2017. You go to the next slide. I won't go over this in great detail, but there are impacts to humans too in terms of light pollution, such as sleep disorders, diabetes, obesity, and breast cancer. You can go on the next slide. Also, it just impacts on the discovery and education. With more light pollution, we're not able to explore deep space and impact future generations. You go to the next slide. Really, my request here is to remove the unnecessary beacon at the top of the building, reduce light levels on the rooftop patio, and the inclusion of bird glass 1 level above the rooftop patio. There will be landscape up there, so that will attract birds and wildlife. So including that bird glass 1 level above the rooftop patio, I think would be good. And it is nice that the architectural team is including that on the building. I think that does help, but extending it 1 level there would be great. And then just following LEED standards for exterior and interior lighting, I think would be important here to limit the impact that it would have on the adjacent park space in the neighborhood. So with that, again, I support this. With just the reduction of lighting would be definitely a benefit for the community and Madison as a whole. And that's it. Thanks.
Thank you.
Helen Kitchell is next.
Okay, thanks. Yes, I actually, I reiterate everything that Andy just said, and I won't bother going all over all the numbers that he had given. But one of my primary concerns is that this massive building will become a bird collision building, and especially that beacon on the top. There's really no need for it, and it will certainly result in far more bird mortalities, especially migratory birds. And you've got Olin Turville Park right there, and you've got the Arb right there. So that was a primary concern. The ideal would be have bird glass all the way up the building. I understand that that's prohibitively expensive, but the first 4 floors really only cover the parking garage, so they don't cover all of those apartments with all their glass and windows. So it would be nice if we could try to find some means by which the residents could be aware of how they could minimize bird collisions as well. That's the other one. Then the other concern I had was just about the sheer height of the building. It just doesn't seem to, I understand the need for housing, but it doesn't seem to fit with the neighborhood. As you come off the John Nolan, onto John Nolan, this is the only natural gateway to the city. So you've got the park on the right, and you've got Alliant on the left, and then you have some residentials, and then you have the lakes, and then you have the Capitol. And all of a sudden, we'll have this big 18-story building that this monolith in the midst of it. So it just seems excessive for the location and not in compliance with the rest of the surroundings. Not that it needs to be, a small building, but that it just seems overly large for that location. And then the last one was just about the Wonder Bar, but I think that I don't know if that's a UDC requirement at all. But the hopes to try and move that Wonder Bar to another location so that it is not lost as a result of the building. So the birds were my primary concern, and especially to the elimination of that beacon. And then just the sheer volume, the height of the building seems excessive for the surrounding area. And then just hopefully the preservation of the Wonder Bar.
Next, we have Janelle Munns speaking in opposition, to be followed by Lily Kelly.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes, hi. The McGrath property group proposal for the development land between Bay Creek and Capitol View neighbourhoods is on land not included in either neighbourhood association domain. Because of this, the city's best practice for engaging with community in the design and the development was not followed. Residents of Bay Creek, the development's closest neighbours, did not receive 30-day notice of McGrath's intent to submit this proposal. They in fact did not learn about the proposal until it was already planned, and then only from an article in the local newspaper. I feel the building does not relate in appearance to other buildings along Olin Ave. Its height and massing are too large, and it stands out in an unpleasing manner from its nearest neighbours. The building is surrounded by natural areas, Monona Lake, Olin Park, Monona Bay, and the Arboretum, which is highly valued by residents, and the height and light pollution could be a deterrent to wildlife. And the development requires demolition of the Wonder Bar, Madison's Prohibition Area Roadhouse, a building with character, charm, and amazing Prohibition history. A building that should already have historic landmark status. An issue that many Madison residents find very disturbing. Do we really have to lose this historic building with the numerous apartment buildings that are already under construction and planned in Madison? Thank you.
Thank you. That's all the registrants I see. Julie, do you have any other late registrants?
We do have one registered neither in support nor opposition, is Lily Kelly.
Okay.
Hi. I have several points, and the first is that I ask that we consider our signature skyline here in Madison. Just to reflect on this is going to be a statement building. And We have the Capitol at 284 feet tall, and this building is going to be 180 feet tall and 18 stories. If we look around, there are very few other tall buildings in Madison. One of them is Van Nuys Hall at 243 feet and 19 floors. I think we need to just think about whether and how we consider our skyline. Is it a resource? Is it part of our history? Does it give a sense of the place that is Madison? I think that we have to think about that a little bit. And we might want to consider that this height might be too large for the site. Many people have talked about the scale, and I agree. I concur with this. Basically, my reaction to the design is I'm wondering if people will look for the airport, because it looks like an airport hotel, one of those tall buildings built out on a flat area without any type of urban context. Most people expect a tall building to be in an urban setting, but instead this building is plopped down in a neighborhood and adjacent to a park. Now, that's a nice setting for the people who live in the building. I don't disagree. And I'm not arguing that no building should be built on this site. But I would like to say that part of your job as the Urban Design Commission is to consider the scale, the design, the setting for the building. And I feel that we're moving ahead here, and maybe some questions about that have not been asked and answered by the Urban Design Commission. They have been asked and answered by Mr. McGrath, who sees this as a very attractive building and a very great place for the residents who are going to occupy this building. But the individuals who occupy this building will be a very small fraction of the individuals who are going to look at this building. I just like to bring up another point is this site talking to you a little bit? You have 13 floors of residence in this building and 5 floors on the ground, of which the majority of this is for parking, because this site isn't really receptive to underground parking, which is a solution elsewhere in the city. So we're having to have this enormous height, which is really only 13 stories worth of actual residences for people, to accommodate the fact that the site is pushing back on you a little bit. Maybe that's a message. Maybe that is suggesting that this isn't the perfect site for a building of this scale. Again, it's in a sort of a strange all by itself location. People wonder if they made it to the airport. Finally, I want to concur with the individuals who spoke before about the concern about any tall building, and this will certainly be one of the very few in Madison, and it's going to be attractive to the birds. Please, the other people made a very compelling argument about the birds and about light pollution, so I would like to concur with those individuals. But once again, I want to urge that all of the city individuals really consider the long-term impact of this building on our community. Once it's built, it can't be unbuilt. And once it's built, there will be other buildings, that will come before you, and this will be a precedent. So I urge you to consider it carefully. And again, I am not opposed to a building on this site, but want these things to be thoughtfully considered. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Is that all the registrants?
That is all I see, yes.
Okay. All right, now that we've had the presentation and the public comment, are there any questions or comments from the commission? How about a motion then? No? All right. Well, while you're mulling that over, I'm going to unmute Alder Evers and then Alder Carter because they have something they'd like to share with us.
Thank you, Chair. And first of all, I want to say that I generally am in support of this project, and that I believe it's imperative that we build up and not out as our city grows. Of course, that involves a change in terms of what people are familiar with and their complaints that buildings are not at scale with the rest of the nearby neighborhood. But that's inevitable as cities grow. You come up against certain, like this is the tallest building of this sort we've ever had, but that's various iterations of that occur naturally as cities grow. So that doesn't concern me. But it does concern me that one of the selling points of our city really is the natural aesthetics. And that would be the lakes and the natural environment. Those who helped lay out our city, from John Nolan to John Olin, these folks viewed the urban oasis concept of having these parks as part of our urban experience. And for that reason, with Lake Wingra in District 13, I'm very concerned about the impact of this building, which will be visible from the shoreline at Wingra Park or at Vilas Park, and from other points around Lake Wingra, including the Arboretum. The concerns about light pollution are serious, and so much so that the Friends of Lake Wingra have asked me, and I'm moving forward with a Lake Wingra Heritage Plan working group. And one of the things that we've gotten former zoning administrator and soon to be officially the city's new building inspector, head of the building inspection unit, Matt Tucker, put together a work group to review the city's lighting ordinance, which has not been updated since 2005. And the concerns about the dark sky and minimizing light pollution and having, limitations on illuminated signs. I've spoken before this body about my concerns about illuminated signs at SSM and other buildings in District 13, and also about how buildings are illuminated at night, whether it's stairwells and other parts of exterior and interior lighting, when particularly in commercial spaces or office spaces when they're not in use. This being a residential property, that's more challenging. You can't say anything about people who leave their lights on all night, but elements that can be mitigated, I would ask this body and the Plan Commission as well to do so. I don't think there is any value added in having this penthouse portion illuminated in any way whatsoever. I know that people who show up at Lake Wingra looking at the stars at night will be bothered by seeing this illuminated in the distance in any way. It's just not necessary. So I'd ask for to protect the city's night sky, that you would ask the developer to strike that from the plan, and also do whatever is possible to ensure a minimal amount of impact to migratory species. As Andy Meessmann indicated, they're coming right through this area on a regular basis, and we ought to be mindful of that in our the buildings that we put up. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Alder. Alder Carter.
Yes, thank you. I had a community meeting. Alder Evers invited the project team to an association meeting. So they have incorporated some of the comments from that. But I'll tell you, my concerns are just three things, and I'm not going to talk forever. The bird migration and strike glass, I'm very concerned about that. The height is the height. I prefer something that's 15. But there's really no ordinance that stops it from being 18. And that's just the way it goes, other than the fact that the neighborhood doesn't want it. And my district is not used to apartment building that big. But the one thing that the UDC can address, not the height, and maybe not the bird strike glass, but you can address the lights. And I would hope that you would do that tonight. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, I just would like to direct the commission's attention to Kevin's staff report, and there are a number of specific findings that he would appreciate some mention of. They include the building prominence and its long views, the rooftop mechanical screening. I guess that's part of the long views, but also the controversial lighting of it. Activation along Olin Avenue and the screening of the parking, the John Nolan facade, and then the use of metal panels in UDD number 1, because UDD number 1 mentions metal panel as an accent material. So if you could just keep those in mind while you're gathering your thoughts and thinking about questions and motions. All right, if there's no questions, I have a question for maybe for Joe. It looks like in the renderings, the window mullions are expressed as a dark color, but your material sample image showed it as either a cream or a white color. But the sense I get from the renderings, it's a darker material.
Yeah, the sample is just a window sample, meant for quality, to determine the quality. So I should have mentioned that, not the color. I apologize.
So that's like a charcoal or a dark gray?
Correct.
Okay, great. Thank you. Let's see. Okay, Shane and then Russell.
Thank you. So I will just follow the lead of our alders and the community and just confirm and express my opinion that I do not care for the beacon on the top. I think as a lighting strategy, a lighting design and combination of materials and lighting, it's nice, but it just does not belong up on top. I have witnessed firsthand, just from where I live, also seeing some of these other signage elements and light beacons on tops of buildings that just firsthand, I've seen it in a dark sky situation where it's right there glaring and you can't avoid it in our city. So I am not a fan of that piece. I would also question maybe just the size of it. I would assume that the height of that mechanical penthouse enclosure is necessary based on the size of the mechanical equipment, but it's very tall. So I would love to have that be addressed just to make sure that it's not taller than it needs to be. My initial reaction is that the way that it continues kind of up from the building massing actually accentuates the height of the building. I'm curious to hear what other commissioners might say or how they would comment on that. I don't know that that's a good thing. I think for an already tall building to use that mechanical penthouse to visually add to the height of it, even if it's an illusion, seems maybe unnecessary in this case. On the topic of materials, I don't have any comment on the metal panel. My comment is on the orange tone brick, which the physical sample you have a photo of, to me reads a little institutional and visually connects me to some of the examples of buildings across our city, specifically like institutional or campus buildings that are some of the least nice buildings in our city. And I think in the renderings, it comes across as kind of a more saturated or darker hue, which I think looks nicer in the renderings. I'm just a little afraid of kind of the washed out orange, especially because these are in 4-story volumes on certain facades of the building. I really like how you added the green roof over those canopies. That was just a natural area to introduce that feature. So that's great. I think because they are at a very limited depth of only 4 inches, what I saw, you will want to definitely consider irrigation. I'm usually a fan of a deeper profile so that you can get more native vegetation and some taller vegetation on top of it. So it's not just kind of a flat sedum tray. But I do think that it still holds some stormwater benefits. It obviously has some benefits for the tenants of the building looking down. One plant comment is that overall, I think the landscape, both the planting plan and the site design around the base of the building is nice. There is a potentilla, a small plant shrub that's used that I think is kind of a lower quality plant that I would propose to be replaced with something like a low mounded aronia, or one of any other number of kind of smaller shrubs. And then last but not least, I was wondering how the height does compare to the capital preservation limits. And maybe I missed this part, but I wonder how it relates to that, if it's within that kind of sphere of influence, the distance from the capital. I know we've talked about height a lot, but I don't know exactly what is required of us and how it relates to that capital preservation limit. That's all, and I'm looking for some feedback on that last one in particular.
I
I'll
can
mute Kevin.
Yeah, can you guys hear me? I could respond to the height question.
Yeah, if you know, you're outside the limit, right?
Yeah. So I think it's a 1 mile radius around the Capitol dome for the height restriction. And I don't remember exactly what that number is, but I think we're probably 10, 12 feet above that, give or take. So we're not exceptionally taller than most of the buildings that are on the Capitol Square from an elevation point of view. Yeah, so I think that's about it.
Thank you.
And Lance, could you also address my first comments about the height of the penthouse?
Yeah, absolutely. So we are actually looking at reducing that, and we had a placeholder in there to make room for cooling towers and all the other equipment that needs to happen in that space, because we have a central mechanical system, and there's also elevator overruns that are falling in there. So it looks like we are going to be able to reduce it a little bit, and we will be doing that because it costs money to build volume of space, and cost is always an issue on these projects. So that will be reduced to what works with our mechanical system once it's fully designed.
Okay, thank you.
Russell, and then Lois.
Thank you. Well, I like a lot of elements of this project. Just second all the comments related to density and how exciting that is to be densifying and using this space to do so. I was going to ask a similar question about the mechanical penthouse. And this is to the development team and design team. Is the penthouse really intended to be that that gesture or that design element for the lights, or is the true intent mechanical. And the reason I ask is, have you evaluated moving the cooling towers to be not such a structural burden from the top of the building to a lower roof, for example? Has that been an option that's been considered?
Yeah, so the mechanical penthouse wants to be at the top of the building just due to the nature of how things circulate, both from a plumbing and from the heating and cooling perspective. So the cooling tower, for example, that will be, there'll be some steam emitted from that, and we really don't want that happening down at a lower level. And it just works better mechanically to pump your water up to the top of the building and let it migrate down. There's still pumps that are helping it move around, but it's the logical location to put it in a project like this.
Okay. Thank you for that.
And let me add also, what we're trying to do with those features at the end of the mechanical penthouse is just trying to make it look attractive and pleasing. And that's not driving the penthouse location. It's definitely trying to just improve the aesthetic of it.
And you mentioned the elevator overruns. I mean, those obviously have to be where they are.
Right.
But well, I guess the way I would phrase it, I'm quite appreciative of the developments and the trying to make that the beacon, if you will, a little more subtle with the slats and trying to make it more subtle and a little more complicated. But I would tend to just agree with the other comments that I think we don't quite understand. I personally don't understand enough about exactly what that would render like in real life. The rendering is nice, and I'm quite encouraged that you have a professional involved. I suppose some technical questions to ask the team to help us understand it might be, one is that a reflective surface on the slats? Can you tell us about the reflectivity of that material?
Yeah, the whole back wall system it's really currently designed to be a curtain wall. So it's acting as an exterior wall and also the architectural feature. So the mullions on the curtain wall will have extensions on them to give them depth, and that's creating the fins. And then there is no glazing on the curtain wall system. It'd be metal panels. So there would be some reflectivity to it, but the way these fixtures are designed, it's really a narrow slat and it's directional. And as Joe mentioned, it's meant to just wash the face of them. And those fins are recessed in a certain distance. Top of my head, 18 inches, 24 inches, somewhere in that range. So it'd also be washing that recess, the sidewall of that recess at the same time. That's the main intent of it, design-wise.
Okay. Personally, I'm excited by that idea. I liked the development, the way it progressed. I do agree with the comments that I'm not convinced that it's the proper site. And what I do really like, for example, is you've taken a similar design approach, I think, or element on the entry with the lower level entry. There's a louvered kind of element, and it seems to be pretty well lit on the inside. I do think that that's quite appropriate and a nice change.
Yeah, you're right. That's meant to connect the two. It's a similar design feature, give it the same type of look. Correct.
And personally, I think at that low of a level, at the street level, I wouldn't be worried about the light pollution as much from there. I'm not sure that I personally am not sure that it's a light pollution concern or the level of lighting from the top, but I do agree with the earlier comments that it would be quite distracting to the eye for someone who was not looking to experience light in that natural landscape. One more question from me, and then I'll turn it over to the group. Can you speak to any plans or really what I'm looking for is more limitations on how commercial kitchen exhaust might be handled, given that you are looking to possibly do a restaurant there, and you have a very nice green roof that's going to be quite exposed in multiple directions. Just curious if you've had thoughts about trying to keep that a nice looking area by sort of limiting how the commercial kitchen exhaust might be approached.
Yeah, correct. So that's not fully designed by any means at this point, but our hope is to find either a restaurant or cafe type user for that first floor. And, so their exhaust needs could vary greatly based on what that use is, but ideally we're finding some sort of food and, type cafe restaurant that would be a real amenity for not just our building, but for the neighborhood also. And it has the nice outdoor seating to go along with it. But, so it really depends what happens with the demand of the whatever, or the intensity of what that use ends up being. Currently, we're thinking we can go sidewall with it, either towards the railroad or possibly out more towards Olin Avenue, but we're not 100% sure yet. It would depend where the kitchen's located and whatnot. But we're always cognizant of, these mixed use buildings and, food restaurant uses. There needs to be quite a bit of thought into how they perform and, operate with odors and garbage and things like that. So that's always on our radar as we start to lay these out.
Well, I would make a strong recommendation, given the urban environment and the context of this building, and given that you had expressed some concerns about seeing the moisture plumes off of the cooling tower on a lower roof, I can definitely tell you that the visibility of smoke from a commercial kitchen will be quite a bit more noticeable. And I would encourage the team and make a strong recommendation that there be some type of a scrubber, which is common in this type of urban setting, to really clean that air before it is rejected to the surroundings.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Thank you. Those are my comments.
Okay, Joe, did you have anything to add? I see your hands raised.
Yeah, if you don't mind, I just wanted to just say that I appreciate those comments, and you were to compare, this keeps being referred to as a beacon, and I would agree that probably our last go round, our last version of this served more as a beacon, right? It was projecting light out. We've worked really hard to integrate that mechanical penthouse level into the design, instead of just simply bringing up a box, an uninteresting box. We've worked to try to create some design interest to it without light pollution, without being obnoxious, and we think we've done a really good job of it. But I would just make the case to, it's not like anything you see in Madison, but that's good. I mean, we need to have some of that dynamic design and different, still taking into case not to be obnoxious, like some of the comments from last time, and the renderings that you see here today are representative of what that will look like. We worked hard back and forth with lighting consultants to make sure what we're showing you today will be representative of what it will be in real life. I'll just leave it at that.
Okay, thank you. Lois, thank you for your patience.
Yeah. I want to direct the image to the entryway. I still feel that it's a little bit, I keep seeing hospital when I look at that, and I'm afraid that that second awning over the entrance to the parking kind of detracts and you kind of lose the main entrance points to the commercial and the residential areas. You kind of have to look for those, and even in the daytime and the nighttime views, I think you see the same thing. They're kind of off to the side, and I'm wondering if that secondary awning is necessary. I wonder if it's kind of contributing to this hospital-like drop-off point look that is detracting me from this really nice plinth shape.
Kevin, I think there is a blow-up rendering toward the end while Lois is talking about it. It kind of is closer to street level. Like on mine, it's number 64 of 70.
Is that the one that you're talking about? The one that's up?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't think that this really, and I did the same thing. I was wondering if you got down to the pedestrian level, if that would change. And I, especially the residential entrance, I think is, kind of tucked in a corner and it's at the side. It's not facing the street. So that part of it, I'm still kind of distracted by. I agree with Shane. I think that the color of the brick when we saw the sample board made me think of, like a school or a university building, and it just doesn't pop. It seems kind of boring, and I don't know, it just doesn't seem to fit with this architecture, which I really like. I think the team did a really nice job on the proportions and geometries of this building, but that brick kind of detracts a little bit. Lastly, as far as the penthouse, I kind of like the way that it's illuminated. I really sympathize with the bird migration, and I think we in the built environment we try not to do harm to things that we can prevent, right? And I think we could prevent potentially some bird confusion or impact. I'm wondering, is there a way to either the light goes out at a certain point of night, like a certain time, or if there is I don't know what the science is, but if there's a certain wavelength that doesn't attract birds that could be used, and if there could be a little bit more investigation in that. And that's my comments.
All right. Let's see. Tom and then Jessica.
Thanks, Cliff. Okay, so first, full disclosure, I am a Bay Creek neighborhood resident, and I am a longstanding member of Friends of Owen Turville Parks. And I'm also one who loves to frequent Vilas Park at night, taking the drive through there because of the unobstructive, fairly dark night sky that you encounter right in the middle of the city. So based on all those considerations, and particularly, I think Andy Meessmann's presentation on the fact that this building sets between two fairly environmentally sensitive areas, Owen Park and Vilas and the Arboretum, the night lighting on the penthouse is an issue. And I would, I guess, mostly prefer that it go away completely. If it has to exist, then maybe some of Lois's comments, can it be turned off? Is it on a rheostat that can be turned down to the lowest level? I think this same building in another location in a different urban environment surrounded by other tall buildings, that kind of lighting would not be as problematic. But this is kind of unique. It's a very tall building between two very large natural areas that have a lot of wildlife, specifically birds. So I think it's a very, very serious issue. And I would ask the developers to really rethink yet again how necessary that lighting is. I would agree with the comments to bring the penthouse down in height if that is possible as well. and just to de-emphasize the height of the building. I also agree with the comments on the brick color. I found it, I don't know if it was institutional, but I just didn't particularly like it with the other tonalities of the building. So re-examining the brick, I think, is worthwhile. And then I had two questions. One, I think the last time you presented that you did mention that you were looking at, and I don't recall the name of the program, but there was some kind of a subsidized housing program through the city of Madison that was at least being explored at the time. I'd like to know what the status of that is. I think, again, from the neighborhood's perspective, will some of this housing at least be somewhat affordable? And then the other question I had was the connection to the Wingra Creek bike path. And has anything been done explicitly to make that more direct? Because it's directly behind the building, but how do you get? So if you could ask the subsidized housing, the bike connection, I'd like if there's a response to that.
I can respond to that. So the program we were talking about last time was actually through WIDA. They have a loan program for income restricted apartments. I think it's called their 710 Flex program. And that loan requires that 20% of the units be rented to folks that don't make more than 80% of Dane County median income. And we used that on a prior project on Willie Street, and it worked out very well with that project. And it's still up in the air whether or not we can do that on this project. And the main issue is the size of the loan. It's a pretty sizable project. It's a big loan, and it's quite a bit larger than what WIDA is used to financing with that program. So they are interested, but what they're willing to finance is a small portion. So they would need to find multiple other banks to partner with them on the loan. So I'm not terribly optimistic at this point that that's going to happen. But it's still in the market. No decisions have been made on financing at this point. And then regarding your question about the connection to the Wingra Creek bike path. So, the easiest route to that right now is just going up Olin Avenue and hopping on it at that point. And that, I think, is probably the preferred path for somebody who wants to ride a bike to downtown. We have not had any in-depth discussions with our neighbors, but there has been some discussion between traffic engineering and ourselves about potentially having some sort of future connector behind our properties, either on the railroad right of way or as part of our properties. But we don't control the adjacent land, but that's something that can be explored in the future. But it's actually a pretty easy connection down to the Wingra Creek bike path, just heading up Olin Avenue.
Just the fact that the bike path is almost directly behind the building, it feels like it could be a real selling point. And of course, we want to encourage alternative transportation. And so the degree to which it could be emphasized and made a positive in terms of alternative transportation, I just think would be valuable. Thank you.
Yeah, that's something we'd love to see. We'd love to have a connector. That would be a great amenity for the building.
Okay, Jessica.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. The first one thing I wanted to mention is that I think this project is really handsome and very stylish, and I think the word beacon is an unfortunate word to be using because it is kind of sets off flags a little bit. And there's much more to this building than that, though it is an issue, which I believe can be addressed. And I think the concerns about birds and wildlife and lighting, I think those are all things that this team has already shown they can address. What I question for us as the Urban Design Council is, I think this is a crux of a question for Madison, is how big and when. This is a site that's already kind of landlocked by car roads. It's not a pedestrian site. It isn't a very nice site necessarily to hang out in the parks unless you actually get to the parks, which entails crossing a busy street. So I think it's a good thing to question whether this size of building is appropriate at this site. And I would argue that it is because it's already kind of landlocked with traffic. That said, I would question the designers about if you have families there, there doesn't seem to be much place for children to land once they leave the building, or even when they're entering, to wait for a bus or just kind of, mess around like kids would. And I think that would go in line with tying into the bike path. So you are surrounded with all these wonderful wildlife amenities and parkways. I wonder if there could be a stronger connection between the building and all of that, while at the same time recognizing it's kind of landlocked by busy roads. So anyway, I just wanted to say kudos on the design. I think it's really thoughtful and I think it's really striking. I think it could be a thing as you enter Madison that Madison could be proud of to have there. Thank you.
Thank you.
Could I address one part of that comment, please?
Go right ahead.
Thank you. So I think what we're proposing here might be, it's a little bit pioneering. That term's used a little bit too frequently, but all the planning that's gone into the Alliant Energy Center master plan and then the subsequent design or destination district planning for all the surrounding lands, to me, that's really exciting what that whole area can transform into. And, projects like this, they create a sizable increment to the tax base and help support and advance some of those future changes. They envision a land bridge connecting the Alliant Energy Center property over to Olin Cherville Parks, multiple improvements along John Nolan Drive, pedestrian connectivity. There's so many things that can happen in the future where, right now we're kind of on an island, but I think if you look at this in 5-10 years, hopefully no longer than that, it's really going to be a pretty dynamic area with really nice access. And projects like this help make that happen. So that's about it.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I've had a lot of good comments, good feedback. I don't see any more hands raised. Somebody pondering a motion. Let's see, they're asking for final approval here. That's right. Although we are an approving body, we still have been requested to make some specific findings. I think that would happen. Would be helpful when the project finds its way to the Plan Commission. Lois.
So I'm not sure, is this I don't want to make a motion for final approval because I think there are some major issues that have come up today that need to be resolved first. But is this a referral or a initial approval again?
I think since the project has only been here for informational, we can refer, give initial or final approval. Those would be three options.
I would say I will make a motion for initial approval and ask that the design team address a couple things that were brought up today, including the penthouse size and how it's expressed if without being illuminated. Looking at a way to maybe bring forward the pedestrian entrance components and lighten the entrance and reconsider the brown or terracotta brick color. I don't think there was anything else that was brought up as a concern.
Okay, is there a second on the motion? Shane, that's a second. Okay, any discussion on the motion? I think this would give us an opportunity then, in addition to the items Lois mentioned to make any specific recommendations with regarding the 5 findings that we need to make. And I think some of those are taking care of the long views, the rooftop mechanical, the John Nolan facade, I think gets to your entry sequence, building materials. We're generally saying that we accept metal panel. It's just we're looking for a different brick, right? Okay. All right. So any other discussion on the motion? Want to be really specific. It sounds to me as though we're hearing very little support for any kind of illumination on the curtain wall system up in the penthouse. I just want to kind of get the commission's feeling on that, so that the development team has real clear direction on that. Okay. All right. So let's see. Seeing no further hands raised, if I see anybody raising their hand, we will take a voice count. Otherwise, it would be unanimous that you have initial approval on the project. Would like to see a few minor tweaks and look forward to seeing that in the future. Thank you very much. Okay. That gets us then to item number 4, which is on East Washington Avenue, 1858 through 1890.
And as far as the speakers registered on this item, we've got one member of the development team registered to speak in support. That's Adam Fredendahl. Now, Adam, I'll pull your presentation up in just a moment.
Kevin, Steve was going to speak as well. Do you have him on there?
I don't believe Julie can double check the list, but I don't see Steve on the list.
I'm refreshing the list. Just one moment. Yes, Steve Doran is on there speaking in support.
Okay.
Steve, you should be unmuted.
I am now. Thank you. Kevin, do you want to? Yeah, okay. Kevin, can you go to the second page, please? Okay. All right. Well, thanks for welcoming us back again. This is Steve Dorn with Galway Companies. I'm going to try to keep this short and let Adam walk through most of this slide deck. But I just wanted to highlight kind of what I see is the major changes we made since we last saw you in April. We've had 2 great neighborhood meetings with good feedback. As Alder Abbas mentioned, we tried to get very engaged with the neighborhood on this project, given the Emerson East neighborhood is directly across First Street from us. And a lot of the comments from the neighborhood, were relative to kind of density and parking, wanting to make sure that parking didn't flow into the neighborhood. And so we were very cognizant of that. We did slightly increase our parking here, but we were able to do that in a way that we kept it all underground. We actually decreased our surface parking area from what we had initially proposed to UDC to create a more dramatic and engaging lobby entrance for the apartment building, which you'll see as Adam goes through the slide deck. I think that was actually one of the bigger feedback items we got from UDC at the preliminary meeting. We did complete a traffic study as well to ensure the project would not cause any issues with the surrounding streets, which we did get blessing from city staff on. We did reduce the building size by 1 floor. We're currently at about 290 units. In previous, we were north 340, and we did that for a few reasons. Just a couple other things I think I'll address. Kind of the main 4 comments that UDC had from the last meeting were relative to the East Wash frontage, the townhomes, the sun study, its effects on the building and the neighborhood and the entrance to the apartment building. And I believe we've addressed all of those. We've substantially redesigned the east wash frontage, eliminated a switchback ramp stair that was in front. As you can see from looking at this image, the building is very engaged with the street as well as the sidewalk in front of it. We've got serious grade issues here as you go down East Washington Avenue, but we were able to still deal with those grade issues and keep the building engaged with the street and the sidewalk by incorporating some permeable stairs as well as a significant amount of landscaping and some seating areas. And a lot of those changes came late because staff continued to work with us, really recently up until the last couple of weeks. As many of you know, I'm primarily and first most a retail commercial developer, and second a multifamily developer. So it's been very important to me that the commercial under this housing is highly successful, and I feel really confident it will be based on discussions that I've preliminary had with some retail and commercial users that we're talking to about going in the building. The townhomes Adam will get to as well in the slides, but we redesigned those substantially, added additional glazing at the streetscape, made the exterior patios usable, turned them into 3-bedroom units, and really added a nice exterior ground floor gathering area for the families that might live there. All at the same time, keep them at scale with the houses across the street and into the Emerson East neighborhood. And then the sun study I touched on a little bit. We did do the sun study, and you'll see, I think, in that the impact to the neighborhood is negligible, as well as the sun study really shows that the courtyards and the green space that we have in those courtyards here at the long ends of the fingers have light most of the year. There's really minimal areas that it doesn't. So I think with that, I'll let Adam take it over here. We're excited to get your feedback from all the changes we made.
Thanks, Steve. I'm gonna try to focus on changes and improvements since the last time we were here. City staff contacted us to further address the concern of creating too much of a barrier to East Washington. So these first few slides illustrate some revisions we have made to further improve that relationship. Next slide, please. Here's a dusk image showing the visibility of the commercial spaces along East Wash, looking toward downtown. Tenant signage will be submitted at a later date, but will be tastefully done to add to the visibility of desirable commercial spaces. Next slide. From the southwest, this corner commercial space is targeted to be a restaurant user with outdoor patio seating. We're also anticipating a rooftop commercial space. You can see a little better in the next slide. Some nice lighting, a great rooftop space for perhaps an extension of the first floor business or a standalone bar dining experience. And at the end of the middle wing, you can see in the background there the primary residential entrance. Next slide. Our team has worked through many iterations to get to this point. We feel that the comments provided by the members of the neighborhood and UDC have influenced the design improvements you see here compared to where we were earlier in the project. The image at the top is a crop view of the previous slide. And you can see from the plan images, we worked to have a good balance of terraced landscaping as well as multiple points of permeability to connect these commercial spaces to the East Wash corridor. Next slide. We also updated the material palette a bit to address some of the comments received. We feel that this palette is a timeless color palette and appropriate for a building of this scale and style. The tan color brick is the primary masonry color. It is sometimes harder to understand the colors based on lighting and the imagery, but these give a good example of what the realistic colors look like. And then a darker brick at the base of the building. Combination of corrugated metal panels at the top and flat interlock panels at projected bays with trim accents. So there's a wood tone fiber cement panel and then some gray tones on the courtyard of fiber cement siding. Next slide, please. We're gonna move through some other building views here. A little farther out than the previous ones, but it gives you a little better example of perspective from the from the north looking down towards the Capitol and down East or First Street, and then from the southwest looking towards the building, you can see the courtyards there. Next slide. Here you can see on the top image the townhomes scale has been a topic of comment and discussion. What we've done here is to blend the form to the base of the building, utilizing same masonry at this datum and pulling the metal panel to create a rhythm along First Street. These are very unique 3-bedroom townhomes, as Steve mentioned, organized internally kind of as a tri-level. So we've got a bit of a lofted feel to one of the bedrooms. And the position of them has a lot to do with how it interfaces with the rest of the building. We've a challenging site here, and the main floor of those living spaces are at level with parking behind it. So they'll have direct access into their unit. And the green spaces on First Street will be diverse in vegetation and provide a well-kept visual improvement. Next slide. Here's an image of the west side, west elevation facing Burr Jones. You can see the green roof areas that flank the central entry feature, canopy, and a taller glass wall feature that directly inside there would be a figural stair connecting the lobby and amenity spaces on the ground floor up to club room, green roof areas, fitness center on the second floor of the residential portion of the building. Next slide, please. These next few are just some aerial images to understand the building organization on the site. Next slide. Let's just jump to the next one. It's another view of the townhomes from the other side, more towards East Washington, looking down First Street towards Johnson. And a view of East Washington showing, this one shows the last iteration of landscaping prior to comments with staff about permeability. So we were trying to really create a nice landscape transition, as the site is quite challenging from one end to the other. We've got a 10-foot drop. This poses some access and circulation issues. But on this side where it's the furthest from the sidewalk with an elevated dining area and terrace landscaping, feel that will be a very nice space for that tenant. Next slide, please. These are just some additional views of the building. Next slide. And again, this is a shot of the courtyard, one of the north access road that it would be kind of along the lines of an extension of Mifflin. Next slide. And here's the solar study that Steve mentioned. So what we do here is we take accurate images from our global position and run analysis of both the summer and winter solstice, as well as the spring equinox and autumn equinox. So, and then 3 times a day to illustrate 9 a.m., noon, and 5. So as you can see in the springtime, the shadow that the building casts isn't until later in the afternoon and into the evening that it starts to get to the point where it's across First Street. The summer solstice at the extreme on that end, there won't be any shadow cast across the street because the streets are wide enough. In the autumn, it's about the same as the spring. It's a little bit deeper with the angle of, the angle of the sun at different times of day. And then in the winter, of course, we have our most extreme shadow situations in the Midwest here. But as you can see, it's late evening. So around 2:30 in the afternoon is when you'd start to get shadow across the street. And as we all know, sun sets fairly early in the wintertime. So it's a fairly small window of the day that the building will cast a shadow. And then I think the rest of these, for the next slide. Yep, the rest of these are just support drawings of plans, the larger landscaping plans. And I'm be happy to answer questions about any of those if need be, but I think that's it.
Okay, thank you. Julie, I did not see any other public registrants on this.
No, we don't have any on this item.
Okay, and I would remind the commission of Alder Boss's comments earlier in the meeting. Are there any questions or comments from the development team? Christian.
Yeah, I was having a little trouble reading some of the finer details on the landscaping plans, but I liked the density of the plantings and the terraced effect of the raised beds going up across the East Washington face. I think that'll be a really handsome street view, and a little nicer foundation plantings than we typically see on these type of things. Your amenity areas, the courtyards, are the turf areas in there? Is that like an artificial turf?
No, it'll be real glass or real grass.
Okay.
There will be a portion of turf where the dog run area is, but we try to use as much real grass as we can.
Okay, so that's all been engineered and designed to have drainage and enough topsoil to support that up there?
It will, yes.
That's all I have for right now.
Okay. Russell?
Thank you. Nice presentation. Excited about this project. Question I have for the design team, I was trying to understand the parking, the two covered parking areas don't appear to be connected at all. And is there an intent for one parking area to be used for one function and then the other parking area to be used for another, and there will be signage to? I mean, my concern is that just added people trying to find a place to park and trying one and having to drive all the way back out and drive all the way back around and get to the other. Could you just talk a little bit about how you see that working?
Sure. Yeah, I'd be happy to talk through that. So the lower level parking structure will be solely for the residential, the visitors to the project, as well as any customers to the commercials really won't even know that lower level parking exists because the entrance is on the north side of the building. And then the top floor will be shared between the residential and the commercial. So as you enter the project, there won't be any trying to figure out where you're going to park. You're either going to park underneath the building on the top floor or on the minimal amount of surface parking that we have.
If you can flip to the next slide, you can see that top floor.
Yeah, thanks. I think I have colleagues here that probably understand better than I do whether signage really is going to be potential to be successful there, but I could see that making sense with some good signage and wayfinding. So thank you for that clarification. The only other question I had that caught my eye was just there's clearly a design statement kind of desired at what I'm calling the back side of the building. The mullions on the curtain wall are, you've presented a kind of a cool crisscross sort of design. Just curious if we should be considering that as just a recognition that you want to do something interesting there, or if that's really what you're planning, and maybe you could speak to what you're trying to achieve or what the intent of that really is.
Sure. So we have worked together in the past on some real dynamic residential entry conditions, and it's been quite successful and desirable. It helps people really get excited about their common spaces. This being a double height glass wall with an open communicating stair between where you come in the building and access other amenity spaces. We really want to do something dynamic looking there, something that is interesting to see. This style of curtain wall system for doing things like this is somewhat commonplace. It's a little more expensive, of course, but installed in a similar fashion to orthogonal curtain wall. But yeah, it may not be, the lines may not be exactly like that, but the intent is to make it look as close to that as possible. Does that answer your question?
That does answer my question. Thank you. That's all I have for now.
Okay, Shane. Hold on, there we go.
Did it at the same time as you. Okay, thanks. I think exciting project. The prospect of infill on this site is very nice and very exciting. Just a handful of comments here. First of all, on the site plan, it would be a big deal. I'm actually not too concerned about it because I would assume city staff picks this up, but worth mentioning to verify, the way the driveways enter from the street into the building and into the site, they appear to be more like roadways that interrupt the sidewalk. And I would assume that it cannot be that the sidewalk remains constant, that there's a drive apron, and that you navigate from the street up the drive apron to the private drive, and the sidewalk remains kind of that constant width through the driveway. So that would be one thing just to comment on to verify. The other thing is a pretty minor element of the landscape. Overall, I like the landscape and the plant selection. There is a piece of like turf sod lawn on the corner of East Wash and North First Street that the sod lawn just doesn't feel appropriate given the urban nature of the project and that intersection. So I would suggest you just kind of eliminate that little swirl of sod and fill it in with some of the foundation plantings or hardscape. However that works best aesthetically and functionally, but the sod doesn't feel right there. Then last, on the upper level terraces, so I think it's on the plan north terrace where you have a pool, and I'm talking about the roof deck. I think there's the pool, and then there's a fire pit, and then there's a series of seating areas or pergolas, and there doesn't appear to be any hardscape in the center of the fire pit, just the lawn, and there's no like ADA accessible hardscape connecting to those elements. So I think there needs to be some roof pavers or some hardscape that provide accessibility to those features, whether it's coming from the pool direction or I'm not sure which it is supposed to be, but just so they're not floating as islands in lawn. And that's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's see, Jessica and then Lois.
Yeah, maybe you've already answered this, but I was curious about the framing on the top floors of two of the wings, the purpose of it and what those were made out of, the open framing.
Sure. The intent is to really help set up a armature of purlins, if you will, to hang lighting from. They also extend the form that peels away. So one of the design objectives of the black form that comes up these ends and across the top of the building is to really capture the other brick forms. And because we wanted to erode it, if you will, at the tops for some nice rooftop areas, those are really intended to just help establish some continued rhythm from architectural form to architectural form, and provide a little bit more of a dynamic space on the top.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Okay, let's see, Lois, and then back to Russell.
Thank you. I'm appreciative of the improvement you made to the East Washington area. I think that looks much improved, and I like the terrace landscape. I'm having trouble though with the townhouse side of it. It's very dark. I don't know if it's the rendering, if it's the materials of window placement, but it doesn't seem very inviting. And I'm not sure if there's that double-edged sword with being on a really busy street and having too many windows. You feel like you're on the street. But is there any way to maybe make it a little bit more inviting? I think it's the dark brown brick with that little window above, and there's a lot of brick there without any windows in it, and then also that really dark panel, which I'm not sure what that material is, in between the brick piers. Maybe you can speak to the concept here.
Yeah, and before you do, I would add that, there are, I think from the plan, 4 units there, and it's not really expressed to me as 4 townhouses. The brick is almost like a pilaster, and I'd almost expect to see either the brick go along the the whole lower level, and then the upper be a lighter material, or the brick kind of span between those pilasters to help define 4 distinct units. But I agree with Lois. It just doesn't look to me like there are 4 townhouses there.
Yeah, it almost had a back of building vibe to me.
Sure, it certainly is not the intent. I guess one of your first comments, the shadow does not help on the north side of the building here. It's tough to get the accurate lighting to show what it might feel like in real life. We've been through a handful of iterations. Some had like a varied roof line that just changed a little bit from one to the next for the 4. But I can see, I appreciate your comments in that we could tie those together so it reads more like 4. Another option could be to utilize more of a light colored brick there. We were trying to address a comment previously about it looking disjointed from the rest of the base of the building. So I think maybe with the new palette option that has invoked a different reaction that maybe could lighten it up with some of the other brick.
I think what's also making it feel that way is if you look at the windows on the upper floor, they are, looks like the lights are on and the shades are closed. And then, the windows on the lower level are not like that. So it almost makes it feel darker than it really is.
Yeah, I think so. But, some of the brick pilasters have punched openings and doors. Others are just solid. And then, on either side, there seems to be a number of different sized windows in there. I think maybe a little bit lighter brick, but I think there just could be a look at, one really nice townhouse elevation that could just be repeated over and over without changing the floor plan or anything, or even the door entrances. I think it doesn't read as something really, special right there. But I think the materials, are good materials, just tweaking the design of them a little bit.
Sure. And then also, I think, I'm not sure if it's all renderings, but in one of the renderings I'm looking at, the brick pilaster actually has a cap, and then above that is probably an aluminum finish edge. And I don't know, it feels very applique to me rather than anything substantial. So yeah, I think that part of it really needs work.
Okay, anything else, Lois?
No, that's all for me. Thank you.
All right, not Lois, Russell.
Thank you. Kevin, if you could go to A705. I'm back on the crisscross curtain wall. I've digested design team's kind of thoughts on that, and the perspective 12 shows it well. I think that's such a modern expression that just, to me, just does not seem to fit on this design. I see some nice wood tones and cedar tones, and I see some what look like might be beautiful pergola structures in the courtyard with some thick wood members, and I just don't see how this curtain wall fits. And potentially that's what you were after. Maybe you're trying to sort of distinguish that area, but I do wonder if, and usually my commission members will jump in and tell me they disagree with me. But if so, but I think something maybe with a wood tone, a strong framing, or something that has a depth to it coming out from that entryway to really flag that, that is something of interest back there, could be a lot more successful. And I just really think you should consider whether that crisscross fits here. Anyway, my comments. Thank you.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that's the only part of the building that has a kind of really eccentric idiosyncrasy to it, and it's kind of out of context. The reason I didn't really bring it up is it's kind of internal to the site. If it was right on the street, I might have a greater concern, but I would think that maybe a random vertical pattern of straight plumb mullions might be a less expensive way to get a little bit more bang out of the buck. But it almost sounded as though the design team was still refining that.
That's all I had.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments? I'm going to assume that the bright pinks and bright yellow green landscaping colors in the elevation were not accurate. I hope.
Yeah. Can I? Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, I was just going to respond to the mullions on the cross curtain wall and the townhomes. So that was just a concept, and Russell, I appreciate, Cliff, I appreciate your concerns. I think we certainly could do something more vertical there very easily, and I appreciate your comments. I think if I think we're looking for initial final tonight. I don't know if it's a situation where that could be a condition where those are made vertical subject to staff approval, and then it seems like that and the townhome variegation are the main issues. I don't know if there's a situation where it's initial final where those two items are resolved at the staff level, but we're very willing to address those two concerns. And I think the more I'm looking at this, sitting here talking to you, I do think a vertical mullion there with some wood could make a lot of sense.
Thank you. Let's see. I thought, there's your hand, Lois. Go ahead.
I think I would add the overhang as well, or the canopy as well.
But yeah, the whole entry element there. Sure.
And is there any more comments, or else I'll make a motion?
I don't see any more comments. How about a motion?
I'll make a motion for initial approval with asking that the design team relook at that back entrance vernacular or design, and then also the townhouse elevation as well.
All right. Is there a second on the motion? Seconded by Russell. Okay, discussion on the motion. Hands down if there's any discussion on the motion, any other details, elements that you'd like addressed in the motion? Nope. Okay. Seeing no further hands raised, then by unanimous consent, you have initial approval for the project. Thank you very much. And we look forward to seeing a few little tweaks and send you on your way. Okay, so that means we are down to item number 8. And that is discussion of the future virtual versus in-person meetings. We informally kind of introduced this last time. I know, I think Lois and Jessica and Alder Alboris, you weren't here, but you did hopefully see the memo that was included. I think it was authored by Heather Stouter. And to summarize, Kevin, I think by default, we are going to continue how we are conducting our meetings now, at least through September 1st. And then if we as a body want to go in person, we would need to vote on that and have an executive committee, I think, approve that. Do I have that right, Kevin?
Yes, the only clarification, after if the commission were to take a vote to go back to in-person meetings after September, I believe it would be reviewed, that request would be reviewed by the mayor and the council president.
Council president, okay. And then I think the same thing would occur for a one-off meeting. So if there was, a brand new state capitol or something, we'd want to say, hey, we're going to do this one in person. But other than that, we would, and in that case, we would just say, can we do this one-off meeting for this big, huge project in person? And then the same group of people would consider that request. So if we do not wish to go back in person, then we don't do anything. It's the status quo, and that's the way it is. But I wanted to be sure everybody had the opportunity to make a request for in-person meetings, because then we would be obligated, I think, to vote on that. Nope. Russell.
Just a question following up on the idea of these one-offs. I mean, we frequently don't know the agenda a month, 30 days before, in order to get through that chain of approvals. How would that work?
Well, I think the letter said, they'd like ideally to see a month, maybe as soon as the agenda came out, we would make that request. I think we've pretty successfully navigated through some pretty big projects, including the American Exchange project there on the square. So I'm not sure I can see where a one-off would be something we would need, but there is the option to request that.
Thank you.
Okay. All right.
I'm sorry, I'm not quite sure I'm understanding it. We're kind of saying we're going to stay online.
Yeah. Unless forever.
For a month, forever. Oh, I missed a pretty big discussion then. Because I'm dying to get offline.
All right.
But, if it's just me, all right.
Well, I see a number of hands raised, and that's why we want to have this discussion to see if we have individuals, commissioners who believe that doing these in person is important. It's not our decision. We can make the request. Let's see, Rafiq, and then Alder Alboris, and then Christian.
Well, Jessica, it's not just you. It's a different thing to try to do all of this digitally. You don't get the materials. You don't get to do a lot of those things, and I think that matters. I had a meeting with the city today in that room, and I was like, it's been a long time since I've been in that room, and it's just a totally different feel. So yeah, I'm over the Zoom. To recuse yourself and just turn your camera off and just sit here is weird. So.
Yeah, well, just from a presenter's perspective too, we can't, it bugs me that I can't see them speak or interact with them in any way.
Right, and they don't have control of their presentation, and
Yeah.
they're saying, Kevin, no, the next one, oh, stop, no, you went past it, that kind of stuff.
Right.
That's I don't know if there's an answer for that. Let's see, Christian, and then Alder Boris. I think that was the order.
Okay, am I up?
Yep.
All right. Yeah, I can certainly understand, from an administrative standpoint, and certainly for folks like Julie that had to put together those enormous packets for us and get them to us and everything. But yeah, if I have to choose one way or another, the in-person meetings work so much better for me. For a lot of reasons. I mean, I just think interacting with human beings face to face is almost always going to be preferable to doing it this way. And the technical snafus, while they're not horrible, they pop up on a pretty regular basis. I could barely understand Alder Abbas earlier this evening. We're all familiar with Tom's Mickey Mouse microphone issues. And sometimes they're bigger. When we were working on the American Exchange Project, I was frozen out for over 10 minutes. I could see and hear everything that was going on, but I couldn't raise my hand. I couldn't do anything. And that was a one-time occurrence, but I was pretty upset about it because I had something to say about that project and I felt like I got locked out of it. And that's not going to happen at an in-person meeting. I didn't join this commission for the social aspect of it, but I just find that being in physical proximity to both my fellow commissioners and the people that are doing these presentations is just a better experience from a communication standpoint. And if I'm not gonna, be really upset if we continue on with Zoom meetings, but I was really hoping all along that it was a temporary thing and that we would get back to the old routine, even with its own set of logistical problems and stuff. So if I had a vote on it, I would vote for in-person meetings.
Okay, Alder Boris. Is he frozen? There he is. Can you hear me?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Can you hear me? I think I was having connection issues myself here.
Yeah,
we
can.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, so my understanding of sort of the in-person or virtual meeting setting is that obviously each body has the discretion, like, to sort of democratically vote on what's best, and so. And then that, obviously we have to pick one or the other, which is unfortunate. I wish there would be a space or a way in which we could toggle between the two, but I understand the IT restrictions and limitations, so I get it. I just want to voice my opinion is that, I would prefer the in-person model and be able to connect with each of you. From my seat where I'm at currently, I think that I would vote heavily in favor of the virtual platform. It's shown that it works. Obviously, there's some difficulties around it. You don't have the sort of, I guess, connection that you would with folks at a human level. But I think that, like, operationally, it works fine. And just, I think, given my personal situation right now, I prefer it with the other sort of meeting commitments that I have. The virtual setting is just much more sustainable for me right now. So that'd be my vote.
Okay, thank you. Just out of curiosity, I can't remember, is the council meeting in person?
Nope, right now we're meeting via Zoom, so unless
you
if
are.
there's,
Okay.
yeah, and unless if something has most recently changed, I think that is the mode of meeting that we're using now.
Does that go for all the other committees that you're on too?
Yeah, I think plan. We just talked about this, and I had like sort of an offline conversation with Heather as well. And Kevin, you probably know this as well, but I think that Heather was thinking that plan is likely going to continue to do virtual.
Okay.
At this,
that's my understanding right now.
All right. So I see a bunch of hands raised. Lois, then Jessica, and then Tom.
I see the value both ways. I miss seeing the commission members in person. And I ran into Christian and it was kind of nice to just have a conversation about all the stuff that you don't talk about during these Zoom meetings. But I also don't want to get the packet every week, because I do have a large screen at home. I'm all set up to work virtually. And so I would vote for not, even if we go in person, not getting those packets printed, because we can easily still review online. And if there are images that, we could do a partial printing of any, just pertinent images for us to see that are there when we show up. I would be in favor of that. But I would do it either way. I wish that maybe there would be an outlet for us to get together, if it's going to go virtual, that we could actually have like get-togethers or discuss things in person occasionally.
Well, that's another issue. I think we'd have to discuss that in terms of whether that would require public notice and,
exactly.
Could we do something like that outside of our normal duties?
Well, and then speaking of public, I do think there is something that feels more transparent about these meetings if we're in person than kind of all sitting in our own homes and, clicking it out. So that's my last comment about it.
So I didn't hear you saying you're strongly in favor of one way or the other, but we're not voting anyway. So you certainly don't need to express that now.
No, and I don't have a strong opinion either way.
Okay. Jessica, and then Tom, then Russell.
I noticed that I don't need that packet. That's been actually really nice to look on a screen instead. I also miss seeing the materials, not that we saw them every time, but I have to admit, when I see them on a screen, I'm just kind of like, okay. And then also cookies.
Yeah, well, by the time we get back together, the weather will cool off. It'll be great baking weather. All right.
Actually, one more thing. I think Lois is right on transparency as well, because when people are presenting, they can see us. And I know I already said it, but it really bugs me. I can't see them. And you don't get to build that sense of networking in our industry either, which is a nice thing about being on the UDC, is seeing repeat people come back and getting to know their, work a little bit, body of work, and so on. So that's just another pro, in case anybody's wondering why we shouldn't meet in person.
Okay. Tom, and then Russell.
Thanks, Cliff. I'm going to. I was hoping for a hybrid or mixed approach. I was disappointed to see that it's kind of an all or nothing. I like the convenience of virtual very, very much, and I would prefer not to deal with parking downtown and weather and all the constraints and just moving my whole body down there. So, I would point out two things. One, I do think actually for the public participation, virtual is, I don't know about in terms of numbers of people who have presented to us, but in our neighborhood meetings, we have doubled participation since we moved to Zoom. So there are pluses, even though some of you are bored to tears with Zoom. I totally agree with no packets. Let's stick with the electronic, fewer trees approach. And I wonder, is there some reason why we can't do cameras, the video with our presenters? I would like to see them too. I think it would make the meetings a little more dynamic if we could see the presenters along with the slide. Because you can get the presenter up in the corner and still have their pictures. I think one thing would be to modify the virtual approach a little. I also think in terms of the public input that you can set the 3-minute limit. you can just turn somebody off at 3 minutes. So there are pluses and minuses. I was hoping, like I said, for a hybrid or mixed model. So I mean, I guess I'll go with the flow. But for me, virtual is much easier and much. So those are my thoughts.
Okay, and Stefan, if you're still with us, is there a reason why the presenters can't turn on their camera on their laptop?
Yeah, so the presenters join as members of the public, and so we have to basically keep the rules the same as if they were members of the public. And people have decided that we don't want members of the public being able to turn on their video for various reasons. Privacy, liability. There's a lot of bigger issues going on there if we allow the public to turn on video. So that decision was made early on, and just by proxy, because we, treat these presenters as members of the public, that kind of puts them in that category, if that makes sense.
So potentially a member of the public could abuse that forum and display
Believe it
something
or not.
that we others might find objectionable.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. Sorry, Tom.
Well, it's something that could be changed.
Yeah.
I don't know why just like the speaker, whether it's a member of the public, or citizen or presenter, that they could turn on their video. Just that one person at that one time, not the whole 55 participants, but just that single person at the time. It's also almost like a politeness thing to say, you're speaking to us, we'd like to see you. But anyhow, it's something, I think it's policy. It probably could be reconsidered.
Okay. Russell?
I was just had a similar question as Tom about public engagement and whether we actually know, or if we've had a record of, how many people have been logging in and viewing these meetings versus how many people have been able to get down to the city county building and participate.
People watch them after the fact. I think Lois and I can attest to some nasty emails we received in person due to some comments on a project. But I've heard I've read in the paper, not this commission, but Alders saying there's a lot more public engagement. Maybe Kevin, you know this from your role, but it seems like the public really likes the fact that they can, while they're waiting for their item number 7 to be on there, they can be running around listening and not sitting in a room wondering if they have to plug the parking meter. Okay, I'm thinking I'd like to, maybe there is some support for it and some ambivalence, but definitely some strong support for it. So I think with the fact that we can't go in person for a while anyway, what if we schedule a vote on it for next meeting? Is that something, Kevin and Julie, we could actually put on the agenda then?
I think the rule in the memo that you referenced that Heather sent out, there's a timeline in terms of a number of weeks that you have to take that action before you'd be able to have an in-person meeting, but that would certainly be well before the deadline. So you could do it the next meeting, or perhaps even later, depending on attendance.
And I presume it would be the same rules that we would just need to do it. We would need a majority of the quorum for it to pass.
Correct.
Okay. All right. So really think long and hard about it, which way you really feel about it, and then we'll make sure everybody has a vote on that. Okay. Any other business by members or staff? No. Okay.
A question I've had,
Yeah.
Cliff, and it's partially related to something Lois said, but I might have missed the meeting. There was talk about a tour, and I don't know where that went, and you know, that sort of checked the box about us interacting as human beings. I've never seen most of you in, you know, real life, so I was interested in that. Just curious where that went.
I'm 6'4".
6'4".
190. Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah. Oh, where are we with the tour, Kevin or Julie?
Sure. Well, I'll start out. Julie's been working diligently on that. Right now, we have a virtual bus tour that's scheduled, I believe, for the August 20th UDC date. So about a month from now. We've got
August 25th.
25th. I'm sorry. Thank you, Julie. August 25th. You know, a little bit later this summer, we're going to do a virtual bus tour. And so I'm not sure why we're calling it a virtual bus tour. I don't think there's any bus involved in any sort of meaningful way. But there are materials, and based on the suggestions we've had previously, we're going to highlight a handful of West Side projects. And the way the materials are going to do, they're going to kind of show the different iterations. So what came to this body as informational, what got approved, and then what got and how that appeared once it was constructed and so forth. So hopefully we're going to try to capture that in those different phases to the extent possible. So scheduled for the 25th, we're still working a little bit internally about kind of how we're going to set that up in terms of kind of doing that presentation. But it's going to be scheduled as a regular virtual meeting, and we'll need quorum and all the other things. I don't expect there to be any action on any of the items, but there'll be more information to come in the coming weeks. Julie, did I miss anything or anything else you'd want to add?
And you did not miss anything. No, I would just add that hopefully at about 2 weeks before that August 25th date, at least 2 weeks, if not more, we'll be sending out a PDF of all the bus stops that we suggest to visit, along with the photos that Kevin described. So should have ample time to go visit them.
Maybe Russell can set up a happy hour before or after it.
Well, I was going to try to, first I was going to say thank you, given the staff transitions and everything, Kevin and Julie, very appreciative of that, you know, keeping that moving. I'm going to complicate things and ask, can we make a vote to make that an in-person tour versus a virtual tour, and what the process would be to do that?
No, that ship
sailed. Okay.
Yeah.
The bus is sailed.
The bus is sailed. Thank you.
But we could put a little red pin indicating where the closest tavern is to each bus stop. I'll work on that. Okay.
Your strong suit.
Yeah. All right. So hopefully everybody's got August 25th committed to Urban Design Commission meeting, because that'll be a really good one for all of us to participate in as much as we can. All right. Any other business by members? All right. Thanks a lot, Kevin, for doing double duty here. Stefan and Julie, thanks again as always. And we'll see the rest of the commission in a couple of weeks.
Thanks, everyone. Good night.